within the valley of Shiratani, where sunlight barely touches the forest floor, lies an abandoned shrine forgotten for half a century. Locals avoid it as if fleeing from a curse. But when journalist Akiho receives a nameless email, she steps into a place no one dares to enter, a place where spirits, deities, and broken vows drift between the realms of the living and the dead. The longer she stays, the clearer it becomes. In Kamo Shrine, nothing is just a rumor. And some voices, once heard 3 times, are enough to claim a soul. Chapter 1: The Shrine at the End of the Valley. The morning was wrapped in heavy fog when Akiho sat inside her small rental room in Osaka, sipping coffee while scrolling through her inbox. As a freelance journalist, she was used to receiving meaningless emails, advertisements, press releases, irrelevant invitations. But one subject line made her stop. Shiratani, Kamo Shrine. The email had no sender name, no signature. Inside was only a single sentence. If you want to know the truth about the disappearances of the past 50 years, come to Kamo Shrine, Shiratani Village. Nothing else. Yet somehow, the words felt heavy, as if they were pulling her towards something unseen. Akiho knew Shiratani, a remote mountain village in Nara Prefecture, known quietly for strange disappearances. Hikers went missing, a few locals vanished, officials always blamed accidents, but rumors said otherwise. 3 days later, Akiho was standing there in person. Shiratani was small, surrounded by towering forests of cedar and pine. The trees stretched so high they blocked the sky, letting only thin beams of light slip through. She followed a moss-covered stone path deeper into the valley. Then the shrine appeared. The red Torii gate stood old and worn, its peeling paint revealing the dark wood beneath. The moment she stepped under it, the atmosphere shifted. The forest went silent. No birds. No insects. No wind. Only stillness, thick and lifeless. An elderly man stood before the main hall, thin, hunched, with cloudy eyes that watched her closely. His voice was rough and hollow. "You've arrived?" Akiho stopped in her tracks. "You knew I was coming?" The old man approached slowly, his footsteps creating faint cracking sounds. He sensed the wish inside you. "Wish?" she asked quietly. "You seek the truth. That is a prayer, whether spoken or not." Before she could respond, the wind chime above them rang sharply. But there was no wind. Akiho felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "Who are you?" she asked. "My name is Saki. I am the last keeper of this shrine." Akiho glanced around the shrine grounds and noticed a small wooden room beside the main hall. Its door was shut tight with a thick wooden bar and covered in faded paper talismans. Some were torn, as though something inside had clawed at them. She raised her camera and snapped a picture. Saki's voice boomed sharply. "Do not go near that room." "Why? What's inside?" she asked, startled. Saki's expression hardened with fear. "What is inside does not belong to this world. Anyone who tried to open that door disappeared before nightfall." Akiho's breath caught. The fog grew thicker, the shadows longer. The forest behind her seemed alive, watching. Saki turned away, his voice low. "If you stay tonight, do not pray here." Akiho stood frozen, the warning echoing inside her chest. Something told her he wasn't exaggerating. Something here was listening. Chapter 2: The First Night at Kamo Shrine. The sun began sinking behind the tall cedar trees as Akiho walked deeper into the shrine grounds. The air grew colder, heavy with a strange dampness that clung to her skin. Even the faint sound of her footsteps seemed swallowed by the surrounding woods. Saki had told her not to stay the night. But her instinct as a journalist, or perhaps something stronger, urged her to remain. She entered the small guest room Saki had pointed out. It was old but clean, tatami mats, a low wooden table, and a single futon neatly folded. A small lantern sat in the corner, its flame flickering even though the air was still. Akiho set her bag down and tried to shake off the uneasiness crawling under her skin. But as she slid the paper door shut, she froze. A faint sound echoed from the corridor. A soft dragging noise. Slow. Uneven. As if someone were moving their feet without lifting them. She held her breath. Nothing followed. Trying to calm her nerves, she lit a small incense stick she brought along, letting the lavender scent fill the room. For a moment, the atmosphere eased. She took her notebook out and began writing down her first impressions of the shrine. But then, the incense flame flickered violently. A cold gust swept through the room, though the doors were closed. The flame went out. The entire room dimmed. "A draft?" she whispered, though she already knew it wasn't. A soft tapping sound came from the hallway. Once. Twice. Then a pause. Akiho stood up slowly and slid the paper door open just enough to peek outside. The corridor was empty, but the temperature dropped sharply. Her breath turned visible. And at the far end of the corridor, she noticed something odd. A small red ball, perfectly round, placed right in the center of the walkway. Was that there before? She muttered. Before she could think further, the ball moved. Not a bounce, not a roll. It slid straight toward her. Akiho stumbled back and shut the door. Her heart pounded against her ribs. The corridor had no wind. Nothing that could make an object move like that. She backed away from the door, step by step. Then, a soft voice drifted through the thin paper wall. A child's voice. "Where are you?" Akiho's knees weakened. No children lived in Shiratani village. She knew that. Everyone under 30 had moved away long ago. Yet the voice called again, closer this time. "Where are you?" Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, but there was no signal. She clutched the notebook tightly, as if it were a talisman. The voice stopped. Silence filled the room. Then, a soft knock on the door. 3 times. Akiho sat frozen, unable to breathe. The knock came again, lighter, almost playful. She forced herself to whisper. "Who's there?" No answer. Only the sound of something small. Breathing. Right behind the door. Akiho's vision blurred with fear. She backed away until her shoulders pressed against the opposite wall. A moment passed. Then the breathing stopped. The knock stopped. But a new sound formed. The faint scrape of tiny fingernails against wood. Slow. Careful. As if the thing outside the room was trying to memorize the shape of the door. Akiho shut her eyes tightly, waiting for the sound to fade. Minutes later, silence returned. She exhaled shakily and lay on the futon, pulling the thin blanket over herself. But as she turned to the side to calm down, a chill ran through her. Someone had placed the red ball right beside her pillow. Chapter 3: The Woman in the Forest. Akiho barely slept at all. Every time she drifted into half-consciousness, she felt something cold hovering near her face, as if someone were leaning over her in the dark, watching. When the first traces of dawn touched the edge of the sky, she sat up immediately. Her body was drenched in cold sweat, and her breath came in shaky bursts. The red ball was still lying beside her pillow. She picked it up with trembling fingers. It felt cold, too cold for something that had been indoors all night. Akiho placed it on the table, gathered her belongings, and stepped outside for fresh air. Morning fog curled around the shrine grounds like pale smoke. The air carried a damp chill that clung to her skin. Saki was nowhere in sight. She walked toward the edge of the forest, trying to shake the uneasiness that had built up inside her since arriving. Perhaps a short walk would help. But the forest felt wrong. The deeper she went, the quieter it became. Her footsteps landed on soft layers of fallen leaves, yet each step sounded like it was echoing inside a hollow chamber. Suddenly, a faint humming floated through the trees. Not a tune she recognized. Slow. Broken. Almost like a lullaby sung without breath. Akiho stopped. "Is someone there?" she called out softly. No answer. She stepped closer to the source of the sound, brushing past ancient cedar trunks. Her heartbeat grew louder in her ears. Then she saw her. A woman in a white kimono, standing motionless among the trees. Long black hair draped completely over her face. Bare feet sunken slightly into the damp soil. She did not move. She did not breathe. She simply stood there, as if she had always been part of the forest. Akiho felt her skin crawl. "Excuse me," she tried again. "Do you live in this village?" The woman slowly lifted her head. Her hair parted just enough to reveal empty sockets. No eyes. Just two hollow, black cavities that seemed to swallow the light around them. Akiho gasped and stumbled back. The woman tilted her head in a smooth, unnatural angle, her hair shifting to reveal more of the darkness inside those sockets. Something about the void made Akiho's lungs tighten. Then the woman spoke. Her voice was soft, terribly soft, as if coming from far below the earth. "He sees you." Akiho's breath hitched. "Who?" she whispered. The woman responded without hesitation. "Kami Bito." The words slithered through the air like a chill. Akiho backed away, hands trembling. The woman did not follow. She only turned her head a little more, and Akiho finally noticed something else. A chain of paper talismans were stuck to the woman's back. Old, yellowed, brittle. Each one marked with the same symbol Akiho had seen on the sealed room in the shrine. As Akiho stared, the woman seemed to blur at the edges, as though she were dissolving into the fog. Her voice drifted one last time. "Do not pray to him." And then she vanished. Not walked away. Not turned. She simply disappeared into the fog. Akiho stood frozen in place, heart pounding, unable to comprehend what she had seen. Then a sound echoed behind her. A soft thud. Akiho spun around. The red ball was sitting at the base of a tree, right behind her. She had left it inside her room. Her knees nearly buckled. Something was following her. Something knew her name, her presence, her fear. And deep in the forest, hidden beneath the roots and mist, a childlike giggle echoed faintly. Chapter 4: The Old Woman's Warning. Akiho ran back toward the shrine gate, her breath sharp and uneven. The fog pressed against her skin like cold fingers. Every few steps, she glanced over her shoulder, terrified the woman with hollow sockets might be following. When she finally reached the foot of the mountain path, she found a weathered bench beside a small roadside shed. An old woman sat there, wrapped in a worn kimono, her hands trembling slightly as she warmed them over a tiny flame. Her presence felt normal. Shockingly normal compared to everything Akiho had just seen. "Are you lost, dear?" the old woman asked without looking up. Akiho tried to steady her voice. "No, I was at the shrine. I'm staying there." The old woman's hands paused midair. She lifted her face slowly, revealing deep wrinkles carved by time. Her eyes widened in something that looked like pity and fear. "You shouldn't be there," she said. "Not now." Akiho swallowed hard. "Why? What's happening?" The old woman motioned for her to sit. Akiho hesitated, then lowered herself onto the bench. The flame flickered. Kamo Shrine was sealed for a reason. The old woman whispered. Long ago, it was a place of offering. A place where villagers prayed for rain, harvest, safety. Akiho leaned in, listening. But prayers always require something in return. The old woman's voice tightened, trembling at the edges. There was a child, a girl. She was chosen as the offering during the last drought. But the ritual was interrupted. Half done, half undone. A chill shot up Akiho's spine. They tried to seal what was awakened that night. She continued, but what is called cannot be uncalled, and what is offered cannot be half taken. What happened to the girl? Akiho whispered. The old woman's hands shook. She is still there. Not alive, not dead. Waiting. Akiho felt the blood drain from her face. The shrine keeper, she began. Saki, he said nothing about this. Of course he didn't. The old woman's mouth tightened. He is her father. Akiho froze. Father? The old woman nodded slowly. He defied the ritual. He broke the pact. The spirit of the forest, the one they called Kami Bito, took half of the girl's essence. The other half remains trapped in that room. Akiho felt her hands grow cold. The old woman lowered her voice even more. If you heard a voice at night, don't respond. If you hear knocking, don't move. And if the little one calls your name. Akiho's breath hitched. What happens if I answer? The old woman stared into the flame. Then she will know who to look for next. Akiho's pulse hammered in her ears. She stood abruptly. I have to go. I need to speak to Saki. The old woman didn't stop her. She simply whispered, be careful. Once you step inside those wooden gates again, something else might step in with you. Akiho turned and hurried back up the path, the fog swallowing her footsteps. As she neared the Torii gate, a sudden gust of wind sent the wind chime shrieking. And through the rising fog, she thought she saw the faint outline of a small figure near the sealed room. As if waiting for her return. Chapter 5: The Sacrificial Diary. After leaving old Ueda's home, Akiho's mind felt tangled, knotted with fear and disbelief. She wanted to dismiss the elder's warnings as superstition, but every memory from the night before clawed at her thoughts. The tapping at her door, the childlike breathing, the eyeless woman in the forest. And now, the truth about the failed ritual. When Akiho stepped back into Kamo's shrine, she saw Saki sitting silently on the wooden porch. His back was hunched, his hands resting weakly on his knees. He didn't look at her. It was as though he had turned into part of the shrine, an old carving left behind by time. Akiho avoided him and went straight to her room. She shut the door, locked it, and pressed her back against the wall, trying to calm her trembling breath. Her bag lay on the floor where she had left it. She knelt down, unzipped it to get a drink, and froze. Inside, wedged between her clothes and notebook, lay a small old journal she had never seen before. The leather cover was cracked, worn, and cold to the touch. A long scratch ran diagonally across the front, as though etched by fingernails. Her hands shook as she opened it. On the first page, faded ink spelled out crooked letters. Ritual Log 1973. Saki. Akiho's breath stopped. This was Saki's journal. But why was it in her belongings? She turned the page carefully. The old paper smelled of mold and age, as though it had soaked up decades of grief. Another entry. Day 12. Yuna cried all night. She said someone was whispering to her from the northern forest. I checked. There was no one there. But I know it wasn't a human voice. Akiho's heart pounded. She kept reading. Day 19. The village forced my hand. The offering must be young this year. They said the old ways demand purity. Yuna was chosen. I have no choice left. The ink on the last line was smudged, as though blurred by shaking hands or tears. Akiho's vision blurred. Yuna. Saki's daughter. The sacrificed child. Her throat tightened painfully. She turned to the next entry. The ritual failed. The forest spirit is enraged. Yuna is not gone. Not fully. She cries behind the door every night. She says she is cold. She says it's dark. She says she is still here. The journal slipped from Akiho's hands and hit the floor with a dull thud. Her entire body trembled. Her breaths came fast and shallow. A soft sound pulled her attention toward the door. Something was moving outside the paper screen. Soft, unsteady footsteps. Like a child walking barefoot on the wooden floor. Akiho's blood turned to ice. Slowly, painfully slowly, a shadow passed beneath the crack of the door. Small. Fragile. Too small to be an adult. A child. Then came the knocking. Soft at first. Gentle. Almost polite. Tap. 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 Her breath hitched. She covered her mouth. The knocking grew a little stronger. Then, a whisper. A child's whisper. Akiho. Her veins turned to stone. Her heart almost stopped. The voice was so close, so quiet, so fragile. But wrong. Its softness carried something hollow, empty, like wind brushing over bones. Akiho backed away from the door, remembering Ueda's warning. Do not answer when it calls your name. The whisper came again. Akiho. Then silence. No footsteps. No breathing. Nothing. But Akiho knew. Whatever was out there had not left. It was simply waiting. And it now knew her name. Chapter 6: The Eyeless Ones. Akiho barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, The sound of that soft knocking returned to her ears, light, tentative, yet calling her name with a chill that seeped deep into her bones. By dawn, she felt drained, her body heavy and numb, but when she stood up and turned toward the door, something made her heart clench. 3 long scratch marks ran down the wooden surface. They weren't there last night. The grooves were deep, carved into the wood with unnerving precision, as if small, sharp fingers had dragged across the surface again and again. A cold shiver ran along her spine. She stepped outside the room. The early light washed over the shrine grounds, but it did nothing to warm the air. Even the sunlight felt thin and weak here. Saki was kneeling near the steps, arranging talismans. His face looked older today, not from age, but from fear. He didn't need to look at her. "You heard it," he said quietly. Akiho swallowed. "It called my name." Saki closed his eyes for a moment, as though the words wounded him. "That is not Yuna anymore," he murmured. "What cries? What calls? What knocks? It is only what remains." Akiho wrapped her arms around herself. "Then why is it following me?" Saki hesitated. When a ritual fails, the broken spirit searches for something to connect to. Something warm, something alive. Before she could respond, a sound drifted from the edge of the forest. Not wind. Not animals. A soft rustling. Too many footsteps for one person. Too delicate for adults. Akiho turned toward the trees. Shapes were emerging between the trunks. First one. Then 2. Then dozens. Figures dressed in white kimono, drifting through the shadows like pale ghosts. Their movements were silent, not even the leaves crunched beneath them. As they stepped closer, the morning light revealed something horrifying. None of them had eyes. Their faces were smooth and hollow. Empty sockets. Lines of dried, darkened blood tracing down their cheeks. Akiho staggered back. Her stomach twisted. What are they?" she whispered. Saki's lips trembled. They were once villagers, those who came here seeking blessings. Some begged for fortune, some begged for love, some begged for life. He gripped the steps tightly. Kami Bito grants wishes, but the price is always taken from the eyes first. The eyeless figures moved closer, silently forming a half circle along the forest's edge. One of them drifted forward, not walking, but gliding above the ground. Its head tilted toward Akiho. The hollow sockets seemed to focus on her. Then it spoke. Its voice was layered, as if many voices whispered at once. "Do not pray here." Akiho froze. Her heart hammered painfully. Saki pulled her behind him, breath shaking. "They come to warn you," he whispered, "and to see whether you are next." A gust of cold wind swept through the shrine. At that moment, the eyeless figures all snapped their heads toward Akiho. All at once. Fast. Inhuman. Her vision blurred with terror. Then, the figures dissolved. One moment they were there, and the next, only drifting fog remained where they had stood. Akiho gripped her chest, trying to catch her breath. Saki finally looked at her, eyes full of fear he could no longer hide. "Do not record them. Do not take pictures. Do not paint their forms." "Why?" Akiho asked, her voice shaking. He whispered, "Because if you keep their image, they will come to take it back." Chapter 7: The Statue That Moved. After the pale figures vanished into the mist, an eerie silence settled over Kamo's shrine. It wasn't peaceful, it felt wrong, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Akiho's legs felt weak, almost too numb to stand. Her chest tightened with every breath she took. Saki's face had grown ashen. "You shouldn't stay here anymore," he said quietly. "When they appear during daylight, the boundary is thinning." Akiho's voice trembled. "They didn't hurt me. Why are they coming?" "They are watching," Saki replied, warning, and choosing. The word choosing echoed uncomfortably in her mind. She needed answers, real ones, and she felt drawn toward the main hall where she believed the truth hid. She walked toward the shrine's central building, ignoring Saki's pleading look. Inside, the hall was dim, lit only by fading candles. Shadows stretched across the wooden floor like long, lifeless limbs. Carvings on the walls depicted ancient rituals, blindfolded figures, kneeling children, and a tall, twisted silhouette with arms too long to be human. At the center of the hall stood a statue, nearly 2 meters tall, carved from dark wood, its face covered by a cracked mask, split down the middle. The ribs of the statue jutted out sharply, and its hands rested on its knees. It felt alive. Akiho raised her camera, hesitating for only a second before pressing the shutter. Click. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Then, another sound drifted through the hall. Crack. Akiho's heart lurched. She darted her eyes toward the statue. Had it moved? The mask seemed to tilt slightly, the crack along its face widening as though it were stretching into a twisted grin. Akiho backed away, pulse hammering. The wooden sound came again, sharper, like bones snapping. Then, before her eyes, the statue turned its head. Not by coincidence. Not by illusion. Deliberately. Akiho stumbled back, nearly falling. The statue's wooden limbs creaked as if something inside it was shifting. Awakening. A voice seeped out from within it. Not loud, but chilling, like a whisper pressed through old wood. Return what was promised. Akiho's lips trembled. I didn't take anything. The statue stepped off its pedestal. 1 foot at a time. The heavy wood groaned under its own unnatural weight. Akiho screamed and crawled backward, but the statue continued to advance. Its mask quivered, splitting further, revealing the faint shape of a mouth underneath, stretched unnaturally wide. The voice grew clearer. You seek the truth? And those who seek the truth must pay with their eyes. Akiho pressed against the wall, trembling uncontrollably. Suddenly, stop! Saki burst into the hall, clutching a bundle of burning red incense. The smell filled the room instantly. The statue recoiled, twitching violently as if in pain. You cannot take her, Saki shouted. The statue shook, its wooden limbs jerking as though something inside struggled to break free. After several tortuous seconds, it backed away, returning slowly to its pedestal. The cracking sounds faded. Then, stillness. The hall fell silent again, but the air was thick with something terrible. Akiho gasped for breath, her hands shook violently, tears blurring her vision. Saki knelt beside her. You've drawn its attention, he whispered. Now you must leave. His eyes revealed the truth he had never spoken aloud. The ritual has begun again. Chapter 8: The Truth About Yuna. The memory of the statue stepping off its pedestal clung to Akiho like a shadow. Even after Saki dragged her out of the hall, her body still trembled, her breath uneven. The shrine around them felt colder, heavier, as if something unseen had awakened. Saki sat at the edge of the veranda, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the old wooden floorboards. He looked exhausted, defeated, as though he had aged years in just one night. Akiho steadied herself and finally asked, Saki, that statue, that thing, and the child's voice, is it really connected to Yuna? Saki didn't look up. His fingers tightened around the bundle of talismans he held. It is not Yuna anymore, he said quietly. What's left inside that room is only the half that could not leave. Akiho's pulse quickened. What happened to her? Old Ueda told me fragments. But, I need the truth. Saki exhaled slowly, as if pulling the words from deep within a locked memory. Yuna was gentle, he began. She liked collecting fallen leaves. She hated the dark, but she always slept holding my hand, asking for a bedtime story. His voice cracked. Then the drought came. The villagers demanded an offering to the forest spirit, Kami Bito. Traditionally, an adult woman was offered, but that year, they believed only a pure soul would be enough. The implication hit Akiho like ice. They chose Yuna, Saki whispered, and I let them. Akiho swallowed hard. He continued, voice trembling. The night of the ritual, she disappeared. Not violently, not slowly. One moment she was in my arms, and the next, she was gone, as if pulled into a world between breaths. Akiho felt her stomach twist. I heard her crying afterward, Saki said, behind the sealed door, every night, but when I opened it, the room was empty. A heavy silence fell. Her spirit split, he said, half taken by Kamibito, half left behind. Akiho stared at him, horrified. So the child that calls my name? Saki finally looked at her, eyes filled with grief. That is the half that remains. The half that wanders. The half that cannot sleep. Akiho shivered. And the eyeless people? She whispered. They were once villagers who asked the spirit for blessings. Their wishes were granted, but Kamibito always takes the eyes of those who ask. Akiho fought the urge to step away from the shrine entirely. Saki's voice lowered. When those eyeless ones appear, it means someone has been chosen. Akiho's breath caught. You mean, chosen for the ritual? He nodded. And Yuna is calling your name because she recognizes what she once was. A replacement, a substitute, someone to finish the ritual that trapped her. Akiho's heart pounded painfully. She felt the ground tilt beneath her. Saki reached out, placing a shaking hand on her shoulder. You must leave, before it calls your name again. Again? Akiho whispered. It already called me once last night. Saki looked ill. If it calls you 3 times, the ritual will bind you. You won't be able to escape. A chill swept through the air. The wind chimes above them rattled, though no wind blew. From the sealed room behind them, a soft giggle drifted out. A sound small, fragile, yet wrong. Akiho's blood turned cold. A second later, a whisper seeped through the wooden door. Akiho. The second call. Saki's hand slipped from her shoulder. We are running out of time. He breathed. Chapter 9 Yuna returns. The whisper of Akiho's name drifted through the sealed door, thin and stretched like a fragile thread. A chill crawled down her spine, and Saki pulled her away with a trembling hand. That was the second time, he said, voice trembling. If it calls you once more. His words trailed off. Akiho didn't want to know what came next. The shrine felt colder than ever. The air was so still it seemed to press against her chest, making it hard to breathe. Akiho tried to steady herself, but dread coiled tightly inside her stomach. Then, a soft knock came from the sealed room. Once. Twice. Then a dragging sound, as if something small was sliding its hand down the wood. Akiho stumbled backward, but the door didn't open, not yet. The lantern beside them flickered violently. Every shadow on the walls grew longer, darker, stretching unnaturally. Suddenly, the door cracked open just a few centimeters. Akiho's heart seized. Something was standing behind it. Not stepping out. Just standing. Waiting. A tiny silhouette. Child-sized. Saki stepped in front of her, gripping a talisman in one hand. Stay behind me, he whispered. The door pushed open a little more, and the figure stepped into the light. It was a girl. Small. Wearing a white kimono smeared with dirt. Long tangled hair covered most of her face. Her bare feet were streaked with mud, as though she had walked through graves and forests without rest. Akiho's voice died in her throat. The girl lifted her head slowly. The hair parted. Beneath it, 2 hollow eye sockets stared back. Deep. Empty. Dark as the bottom of a forgotten well. Something moved inside those voids, shifting, writhing. Akiho choked on a scream. The girl tilted her head with a twitch, then opened her lips. Her voice was soft, much too soft, almost tender. Did you see my eyes? Akiho's legs gave out. She backed into the wall, trembling violently. The girl stepped forward. Not walking, gliding. Her kimono barely brushed the floor. Saki shouted, "Don't look at her." But it was too late. The girl's face was now inches from Akiho's. A faint, rotten cold radiated from her skin. "Will you give them back?" the girl whispered. "My eyes." Akiho shook her head desperately. I don't have anything." The girl lifted her small hand and placed something gently into Akiho's palm. Akiho looked down, and her heart stopped. It was a straw doll, crudely bound with red string, and stuffed inside its head 2 small black stones. Eyes. Akiho screamed, throwing the doll across the floor. It landed with a soft thud, its eyeless face staring upward. The girl didn't react. She only watched, her empty sockets focused on Akiho. Saki grabbed Akiho's arm. "We need to go, now." But before they could move, the girl whispered again. "Stay with me." Her voice cracked like breaking glass. A cold wind swept through the shrine. The lanterns dimmed. The air thickened as flickers of shadows crawled across the wooden floor. Behind the girl, the sealed room shuddered violently. Skin scratched against wood. Something larger than a child moved inside. Saki paled. "Move, move." He dragged Akiho away, but the girl's silhouette elongated behind them, distorted by the twisting light. Then, a giggle echoed across the shrine. A sound too light, too playful, yet dripping with something hungry. From the darkness, a voice called, "Akiho." The second time had been spoken gently. This time, it sounded eager. Chapter 10: The Ritual of Rebirth. The echo of her name, spoken with unsettling eagerness, lingered in the air long after the floorboards fell silent. Akiho's lungs tightened as though invisible fingers were wrapped around them. She backed away until her spine struck the wall. Saki grabbed her arm, his voice strained. "Do not respond. If you answer it, there will be no turning back." But fear drowned out his words. The whispers, the footsteps, the child's hollow voice. It was too much. The sealed room trembled violently behind them. The talismans fluttered, peeling off one by one. Saki's hand trembled. "We only have one option left." Akiho gasped for air. "What option?" "The ritual of rebirth." Saki walked toward the main hall, and Akiho followed him, though her legs felt like they were carrying someone else's weight. Inside, he knelt and slid aside a floorboard, revealing an old wooden box. When he opened it, cold air seeped out, not ordinary cold, but the kind that felt like it came from deep underground. Inside were sheets of darkened leather, carved with crude symbols. They looked ancient, brittle, and stained by something that was definitely not ink. Akiho's throat tightened. "This is the ritual?" Saki nodded. "This is the original form, the forbidden form, the one meant to bind the offering's soul." He laid the pieces out carefully. The images carved on them showed a circle of blood, a blindfolded girl, a door opening, a towering shadow stepping through. Akiho's hands shook as she traced one illustration. "You mean, someone has to take Yuna's place?" Saki didn't answer. Which was answer enough. Akiho's voice cracked. "You were planning to use me." Saki shut his eyes, pain creasing his face. "I brought you here because the spirit already sensed you." Akiho staggered back. "Sensed me? Why me?" "When you stepped through the Torii, you carried a wish in your heart," Saki said softly. "The spirit hears every wish made inside its boundary." Akiho remembered. She had whispered to herself, barely audible, "I hope I find the truth." Just a thought. Barely a breath. But here, even a breath was a prayer. Saki bowed his head. "And now, Kami Bito believes you are the one that must complete the ritual it was denied." Akiho shook her head violently. No, I'm not going to die for this. I'm not." Crack. The sealed door slammed from inside. The entire shrine shook. Something was trying to break free. Saki clutched Akiho's shoulders. "There is a way to finish the ritual without sacrifice." Akiho stared, breath caught in her throat. "Then do it," she whispered. "Please." Saki looked away, guilt written across every line of his face. "The cost is mine to bear." Before Akiho could respond, the door behind them split slightly. A pale fingertip poked through a crack in the wood. Then tiny knuckles. Then a small palm, pressing against the broken crease. A child's voice seeped through the gap, warping and soft. "Come, here." The candles around the room flickered wildly, stretching shadows until they bent like living limbs. Akiho clutched her head, squeezing her eyes shut. Her name echoed again, not spoken, but breathed. "Akiho." Saki grabbed his staff, voice tightening. "We must start the ritual. Now, before it calls your name the third time." But before he could finish, the sealed door cracked wider. and something small, pale, and trembling began to crawl out. Chapter 11. The eyeless woman returns. The door cracked wider, and the air inside the shrine thickened until Akiho felt as if she were breathing through cloth. The crawling sound from behind the wooden panels made her skin prickle. Saki pushed her behind him, raising the smoldering incense as a weak barrier. "Don't move," he whispered. "If you move, it will come closer." Akiho pressed her back against the wall, heart pounding so violently she thought it might tear through her ribs. The sealed door rattled again, 3 sharp jolts that shook dust from the beams overhead. And then, silence. The kind of silence that makes it hard to tell if the world is holding still or simply waiting. A sudden gust of wind swept through the shrine, yet every door was closed. The lantern flames swayed violently. Akiho turned toward the open courtyard and froze. A figure stood between the trees. A woman. White kimono. Long black hair cascading down like a curtain. The eyeless woman. Akiho staggered backward. The woman took a step. No. Not a step. She glided, her feet never touching the ground, drifting forward like a ghost caught in a silent current. Saki hissed, "Don't look at her." But Akiho was already staring. Frozen. The woman stopped a few meters away. Slowly, her head lifted, her hair shifted, revealing the 2 hollow sockets where her eyes should have been. The voids inside her face pulsed faintly, as though something alive was twisting deep inside them. Akiho bit back a scream. Then the woman spoke. Her voice was soft, but stretched, like words dragged up from underground. "Do not run." Akiho felt her knees weaken. The woman tilted her head, the empty sockets seeming to lock onto her. "You have been called." Saki moved between them, shielding Akiho. "Leave her," he shouted. But the woman ignored him. She pointed at the shrine. Her long, pale finger rose slowly, then aimed at the sealed room. "It has begun." Akiho clutched her chest. The woman lowered her arm and spoke again, her voice brushing against Akiho's ears like a cold breeze. "I was chosen in 1971. Akiho's stomach dropped. The woman continued. "The ritual failed. My eyes were taken. I remained like this." Her hair shifted again, revealing the torn flesh around her sockets, the cracked skin, the dried trails of blood. "Yuna," the woman whispered, "was only half taken." Akiho felt tears sting her eyes. "Are you trying to warn me?" she asked softly. The woman's face twitched. A strange smile spread across her pale lips. "No. I am here to witness." Saki slammed his staff against the ground. "You are forbidden here. Be gone." The woman turned her hollow sockets toward him. "You broke the vow," she said. "And the forest remembers." Then she turned back to Akiho. "You are the next." A chill swept through Akiho so violently she nearly lost her balance. The woman stepped backward into the fog. Her body flickered, once, twice, and vanished completely. No sound. No footprints. As if she had never existed. Before Akiho could catch her breath. Crack. The sealed door behind them split further. 2 talismans fluttered to the ground. A small, trembling hand pressed through the growing gap. Then curled slowly, tapping the wood from the inside. Saki's voice broke. "We only have 1 night left. 1 night to finish the ritual. Or we both die." The door thudded again. And the gap widened. Chapter 12. The Third Call. The crack in the sealed door grew wider. And Akiho felt the air shift around her, thickening, tightening, as though the walls themselves were breathing. The lantern light dimmed until the shrine was swallowed in a murky half-darkness. Saki grabbed her wrist. "We must go to the inner sanctum," he whispered urgently. "The only place it cannot touch. Hurry." Akiho stumbled after him, her legs trembling, each step heavy with dread. Behind them, the sealed door groaned again. But this time something laughed, a small, distorted giggle that echoed like it came from deep inside the floorboards. They reached the inner sanctum, a narrow room hidden behind layers of wooden panels. Saki slid the final barrier shut and began placing talismans around the doorway with shaky hands. Akiho collapsed near the altar. Saki, it called me twice. If it calls again. It won't, Saki said, though his voice wavered. I won't let it. Akiho hugged herself. What exactly happens when it calls 3 times? The ritual binds your soul. Saki replied. You become the substitute offering. The one who finishes the cycle Yuna could not. Akiho shuddered. So I die. Worse, Saki whispered. You remain. Between. Her breath faltered. Suddenly. Tap, tap, tap? The sound echoed from outside the sanctum door. Slow. Gentle. A child's knock. Akiho froze. Her blood iced over. Saki's face drained of color. The knocking grew louder. Tap, tap, tap? Then came the whisper, closer than ever before. Soft as thread unraveling. Aki? Akiho covered her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. No, Saki whispered. Not here, not now. The whisper stretched again, pressing through the cracks in the wood. Ho! Her name, almost complete. Saki rushed to the door, slamming his palm against it and chanting under his breath. The talismans flared weakly. The knocking stopped. For a moment, Akiho trembled uncontrollably. Then, something scratched down the door. Slow. Deliberate. A child's fingernails dragging inch by inch. Akiho pressed herself against the far wall, heart pounding. Why is it coming here? She gasped. Because it knows where you are, Saki said. It remembers your scent, your fear, the warmth of your breath. Akiho felt sick. Then, the wood splintered. A small, pale finger pushed through. Akiho let out a strangled cry. Saki slammed more talismans on the crack. Stay back, he shouted. You cannot take her. But the whisper seeped through the wood as if writing the air itself. Aki-ho. The third call. Akiho's mind went blank. Saki fell to his knees, horrified. No, it's done. The ritual has chosen you. Akiho felt her throat tighten. Saki, what does that mean? What do I do? Before he could answer, a gust of icy wind burst into the sanctum even though all doors were shut. The candles went out instantly. Akiho couldn't see. She couldn't breathe. The darkness pressed against her like it had weight. Then, a tiny hand, cold as winter soil, gently brushed her cheek. Her body locked. Her blood froze. A voice whispered beside her ear, soft and fragile like a dead leaf cracking. Found you. The sanctum shook. The talismans tore. And the door exploded open. Something small crawled into the room, the outline of a child. Twisted, trembling, its head tilted unnaturally. Saki screamed. Run. But Akiho couldn't move. The child's spirit, Yuna's half-soul, lifted its hollow face toward her. And smiled. Chapter 13 The Half-Soul. The sanctum door lay shattered on the floor. Dust and splinters floated through the air like ash. Akiho couldn't breathe. She couldn't even scream. The childlike figure crawled forward on its hands and knees, its small limbs jerking with unnatural stiffness. Saki pulled her behind him, though his hands shook violently. Don't look at it directly, he hissed. If you meet its hollow gaze, it will bind to you completely. But Akiho couldn't look away. The creature lifted its head. Long strands of hair fell aside, revealing the familiar, horrifying emptiness. 2 black sockets where eyes should have been. But now, inside those voids, something moved, something alive, something twisting like roots searching for soil. Akiho felt her stomach turn. The creature spoke. Its voice was soft, childlike, but every word seemed to echo with layers, fragile, broken, and drowning in sorrow. I am cold? Akiho's breath shook. Saki held up a charm, chanting under his breath. The paper talisman glowed faintly. But the creature didn't stop. It crawled further until it was only an arm's length away. Its small fingers touched the cracked floorboards, leaving dark prints behind, prints that pulsed like bruises. Saki lifted more talismans, desperately pressing them to the floor. Stay back, he shouted. You have no right to cross this boundary. But the child only tilted its head. You promised? Saki froze. Akiho turned to him. What does it mean? What promise? Saki's face twisted with guilt. I told her I would finish the ritual. He whispered. I told her I would come for her. But I couldn't. I was afraid. The creature let out a soft, broken giggle. Not playful. Not innocent. You lied? Suddenly, the temperature dropped. Akiho's breath turned white. The creature stood, slowly, stiffly, as if bones cracked with each motion. It wasn't crawling anymore. It was approaching. Saki raised his incense bundle, but the flame sputtered and died. All light in the sanctum seemed to recoil from the creature's presence. Akiho grabbed Saki's arm. What do we do? We run, he said hoarsely. Before Akiho could move, the creature appeared right in front of them, its movement impossibly fast. As if it skipped space itself. Its cold hand landed on Saki's wrist. Saki screamed, dropping to his knees. Dark veins spread from the creature's touch, crawling up his arm like black lightning. Akiho cried out, trying to pull him away. But the creature only whispered. You broke the vow? Saki gasped. I know, I'm sorry. The creature leaned closer, its hollow sockets inches from his face. Sorry is not enough. Saki convulsed. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. His breathing grew faint, uneven. Akiho grabbed him, shaking him. Saki, stay with me. The creature turned toward Akiho. Its mouth stretched into an unnatural smile. Too wide, too sharp, as though skin was tearing at the corners. Then it said, You will finish what he could not. Akiho backed away until her shoulders hit the wall. No, she whispered. No, I'm not your offering. I'm not. The creature's head twitched. You heard me? Its voice grew heavier, drowning in distortion. You heard my call. Akiho's heart hammered painfully. The child lifted its hand, pale, small, trembling, and reached toward her. Saki suddenly grabbed Akiho's arm, gasping for breath. Run now? The sanctum shook violently. The candles burst into flickering flames. The shadows on the walls twisted into long, clawed shapes. The creature shrieked, a sound that shattered the air like breaking glass. Akiho pushed herself to her feet, half dragging Saki as she fled into the corridor. Behind them, the half-souled child screamed again. A scream filled with rage, with grief, with hunger. And it followed. Chapter 14 The Exchange. Darkness fell over the shrine like a burial shroud, swallowing every corner, every breath. Akiho could no longer tell where she was. She saw nothing. Not even her own hands. The world had dissolved into a suffocating void. Then a voice rose from within the darkness. Akiho. Not Yuna's voice. Not the child's whisper. This voice was deeper, thicker, dragging through the air like wet earth. The voice of Kamibito. Akiho felt movement around her, not footsteps, but something like countless cold fingers brushing across her arms, her legs, her back. Each touch was icy, damp, leaving trails of numbness across her skin. Suddenly, a faint red glow appeared ahead. A small flame. The incense Saki held. As the light trembled, Akiho finally saw it. Kamibito. It stood a few steps away, tall and distorted, its limbs stretched beyond human proportion. Its mouth curved open in a smile that tore unnaturally across its face. Behind it stood Yuna, tiny, fragile, silent. Her small kimono fluttered as though stirred by a wind that touched no one else. Saki, clutching the incense bundle, shouted with what little strength he had left. You cannot take her. Kamibito ignored him completely. Its hollow gaze locked onto Akiho. The darkness around it pulsed. Akiho stepped back, but dozens of pale hands rose from the ground, grabbing her ankles. They were children's hands, cold, bony, desperate. She cried out, struggling, but the hands held her tight, pulling her down. Kamibito stretched its long arm toward her. You were called 3 times. You belong to me. Akiho's voice broke. No, please, no. Saki lunged forward, grabbing Kamibito's arm. Take me instead, he screamed. Let her go. She has nothing to do with this. Take my soul. Kamibito paused. Then its head tilted slowly, the sound of cracking wood echoing in the darkness. Your soul is already broken. Your vow destroyed the offering. Saki fell to his knees, shaking violently. I only wanted to save her, he whispered. I only wanted my daughter back. Kamibito leaned close, its mouth stretching wider. She was never yours to save. Yuna stepped forward. Her empty sockets turned toward her father. Father, she said softly, let me go. Her voice was small, but clear, more real than Akiho had ever heard it. Saki choked on a sob. Yuna, I can't lose you again. You already lost me, she whispered, long ago. Akiho felt tears burning her eyes. Kamibito's shadow thickened behind Yuna, rising like smoke. Yuna lifted a hand. She reached toward Akiho. Not to grab her, but to push her back. You must run, she said. If you stay, he will take you too. Akiho shook her head desperately. I won't leave you. Yuna managed a faint smile, one that flickered like a candle on the verge of going out. Please, let me sleep. A wind burst through the shrine. The incense flame flared. The walls groaned as though the entire building was being twisted. Kamibito reached for Akiho again. Saki threw himself in front of it, screaming, Yuna, stop him. And for the first time, the half-soul child obeyed. Yuna's small body glowed with a pale, bluish light. She stepped between Akiho and Kamibito, her tiny silhouette trembling. Kamibito hissed, the air distorting around it. You cannot leave, it roared. The shrine shook violently. Candles burst. Darkness surged. Yuna looked one last time at Akiho. Her voice trembled. Run! The light exploded. Darkness swallowed everything. And Akiho felt something tear, violently, right in front of her. As if a soul had been ripped in half. She screamed. Then everything went black. Chapter 15 The Final Truth. Akiho gasped as consciousness returned to her. She lay on cold soil, the scent of wet earth filling her lungs. Her eyelids fluttered open, and blinding daylight spilled across her vision. She was no longer inside the shrine. She was at the foot of the valley. Her body ached everywhere, bruises on her knees, dirt under her nails, cuts on her arms. She pushed herself up slowly, trembling. The shrine? Where was the shrine? She turned around, and her breath caught. There was nothing where Kamo's shrine had stood. Only a scorched patch of earth, black and barren, as if fire had devoured the entire structure and left no ashes behind. The forest around it was untouched. Only the shrine had vanished, swallowed from existence. Akiho's pulse thundered in her ears. She reached for her camera, hands shaking. The screen flickered alive. Most of the photos were warped, corrupted into black static, smeared with streaks of red or twisted into impossible shapes. But one picture remained clear. Akiho's breath shuddered as she opened it. It was a photo taken in the darkness. She remembered collapsing. The world splitting open. In the photo, Saki was kneeling, holding Yuna gently in his arms. Yuna was no longer twisted or hollow. Her face was serene. Her body glowed faintly, almost peacefully. Behind them stood dozens of eyeless figures, villagers long dead, silent. Watching. Akiho felt tears blur her vision. They're gone, she whispered. They're finally gone. She lowered the camera, overwhelmed with grief and relief tangled together. And then, the screen flickered again. A new line of text appeared, written in crimson strokes across the display. Next turn. Akiho's heart stopped. No, this wasn't supposed to. A gust of cold wind brushed past her neck. She turned toward the tree line. A small shadow stood between the pines. A child-sized silhouette. Still. Unmoving. A white kimono fluttered in the breeze. Long dark hair hung down. Her head tilted slightly. Two empty sockets stared at Akiho from across the distance. Akiho stumbled back. No, Yuna, please, no. But the figure did not move. It only pointed. A small, delicate finger lifted and aimed straight at Akiho. A whisper drifted through the forest, thin and stretched, carried by cold air. Akiho. The fourth call. Akiho's knees buckled. The ritual wasn't over. Yuna wasn't gone. Kamibito wasn't done. She covered her mouth to stifle a sob. The shadow between the trees stepped forward. Slowly, silently, as though the world belonged to her. Kamo's shrine has vanished from the map, but its darkness clings to Akiho like a mark that cannot be erased. The unseen lullabies, the whispers calling her name, and the unfinished ritual continue to follow her out of the forest. When Yuna appears once more, with hollow sockets and a trembling finger pointed straight at her, Akiho realizes the story is far from over. Part 1 ends here, but the ritual remains open. Because somewhere behind the night of Shiratani, the next turn has already begun.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.